Hello Fast Fam, thanks for tuning in. I'm Craig Lieberman and I've been tinkering on cars since 1980. I've owned more than 40 cars in my life. Some were heroes, some were zeros. But never in my wildest dreams would I ever guess that 3 of my cars would go on to star in a motion picture franchise. My Supra, my GTR, and my Maxima all had starring roles in Universal's Fast and Furious movies. Over the next 3 years, I'd served Universal as a technical advisor. I helped choose the cars, procure the parts, oversee their builds, and support both production and post-production. I have some cool stories to tell about what it was like to build these cars and to work with the cast. I was there, on set, in the production meetings, working on cars, hanging with the actors, and consulting on post-production. So follow along as I tell the stories. Let's jump in. Well, hello everybody and welcome back. In this episode, we're going to talk about race wars. The idea of race wars actually came from our need to bring the film to its climax. It's mentioned briefly in the scene where Brian tries to get in on whatever Dom is doing. We finally get to race wars as the film moves towards its climax. The event was actually fictitious, of course. It simply needed to be a generic racing event where girls, cars, and music were showcased to essentially tie together all the elements of the tuner scene from that era. Jesse's Jetta, Leon's R33, Brian's Supra, Johnny Tran's S2000, Letty's 240SX, Mia's Integra, Dom's RX-7, and Hector's Gold Civic were all at the event, but not all of them appeared in the final edit of the movie. The event required about 1,000 people to be used as extras. These people came from a number of sources. My task was to find and recruit 35 cars that could essentially race all day for 5 days. These races would run in the background as they filmed other sequences elsewhere on the set. The event's name was totally fabricated, as no such event existed under that name. At the time, there were several drag racing events that were similar, such as Extreme Auto Fest, Hot Import Nights, the IDRC Racing Series, the Naira Racing Series, and Battle of the Imports. Since none of these names could be used because of licensing issues, the production team made up a name out of thin air and Race Wars was born. Today there are many events around the globe that use the Race Wars moniker. The event was held at San Bernardino International Airport. This was an active airport and our drag strip actually extended almost to the active runway, so we had to be careful as we get the cars to turn around at the end. The scene was filmed during the week of September 17, 2000. Temperatures that week were over 100 degrees and it was quite uncomfortable for everybody who had to stick around all day, every day for 5 days. I used my connections to recruit 35 racers in their cars. Their sole task was to keep racing anytime the cameras were filming, even if it was just for background action. As you can imagine, this got pretty boring. It sounds like fun, but running your car 2 to 3 times per hour and the heat grows old really quickly. Let's break the scene down. Paul arrives in the Supra. There's a quick shot of my friend Aaron's arm as he writes numbers in shoe polish on the windows as Brian rolls in. The first main part of the race war sequence is when Letty and the Reggae Racer pull up to race. In this scene, as they inch their way up in the line, neither one of these cars were running. We were actually pushing them from behind so that the engine sounds wouldn't step on the dialogue. The outcome of that race, of course, was a foregone conclusion and Letty smokes the Reggae Racer. Brian soon learns of Jesse's pink slip race against Johnny Tran and tries to talk him out of it. After all, it's his dad's car. The line about $100,000 being under the hood of Johnny Tran's S2000 was utter bullshit, but that was the least of the gaffes to be made in that scene. The most egregious of these gaffes was, of course, the no brake caliper on the Jetta. I've covered this before in another video, but the Jetta did in fact have a brake caliper behind the fake disc. Since this was a stunt car, it didn't have big brakes with 19-inch wheels. So the 10-inch stock brake disc looked tiny, so fake discs were used. During the race, if you watch things like the headrest in the cars, the rear wing on the cars, the steering wheel cover on the Jetta, and the rear quarter window in both cars, you'll see that we actually used a Honda Civic Mic rig for interior close-ups for both Jesse and Johnny Tran's car. Why do we do this? We simply didn't have the budget to build a Mic rig Jetta or a Mic rig S2000. As they pull up to the line, I make a short cameo in the movie where you'll see me wave my hands with some interesting gestures. I know damn well that this wasn't how you start a race. I've been to more than a few straight races back in my day, but for this sequence, Rob Cohen wanted something special. So when we first did the first launch of the race, I basically went up there and went like this, go. And Rob was like, cut, 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 cut. No, you need to do something that kind of builds up the action, okay? You gotta build it up. And I said, well, like what? This is the way you start a race. He says, did you ever see Top Gun? I said, yeah, everybody's seen Top Gun. He says, remember that scene when they were launching the airplanes off the deck of the aircraft carrier? I said, of course. He says, remember that part where the launch guy stands up there and basically looks at the pilot and gives him signals and then he does this thing like revving the engines and then he goes and drops his hand? I said, yeah. He says, we want you to do that. I was like, dude, that's not authentic. I can't do that. He says, why not? I said, because my friends are going to be watching this. It should be freaking ridiculous. He says, no, you got to do it. We got to try that. Or something like that. You come up with something, we're going to go film something else, we'll come back. So Rob goes off and he starts filming other background action, close-ups of cars, things like that. At some point, I was having a problem keeping the racers going, so I get the call on the radio and they're saying, you got to keep the cars going. The problem was that all the drivers were looking at the pretty Asian girls lined up with the little Catholic high school girl outfits on, and they were looking at them, and I kept getting the call, you got to keep going. Finally, I just got pissed off, and I looked over at the driver, I was like, dude, look at me. Dude, look at me. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Rev them up, go. The cars take off and I hear Rob screaming on the radio. Rob's going, that's great, hold still, we'll be right there. So he comes running over and the production crew is coming up behind them, they're moving the tents and their set and all their carts with the TVs and all that. And Rob comes up to me and goes, what did you just do there? I said, what? He's like, well, the thing with the thing. Yeah, he says, do that. I said, I can't do that, man. He says, why not? I said, I told you, that's not how racing is done. You basically just put your hands up and you drop and they go. That's the way it goes. He says, no, that's perfect, you got to do that. So that's basically what I did. I got back up the starting line, Johnny Tran pulls up, Jesse pulls up himself, lines up the cars, and so the camera pulls back, it's on a big crane and everything, and so the crane pulls, it's up in the sky, and then it comes down on me, and I'm doing this, and I drop it, off they go. And that was my 15-second cameo, and that's how it happened. To no one's surprise, the Jetta gets gapped and Jesse takes off. This doesn't sit well with Johnny Tran, of course, and a fight ensues between the rival groups. The actors did most of their own stunts during that fight sequence. One interesting fact about this event was that all of the cars belonged to real people. None of them were built for the movie. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to those cars after the movie. The movie moves to its inevitable climax, but the Race Wars name lives on in both legend and in real life. That's it for this week, everybody. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in next time for some more behind-the-scenes stories.